I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, a balancing act at Balboa Park where folks are trying to save water, the unusual source that may help quench thirsty plants.
And what impact will the new ruling on where sex offender parolees can live have in San Diego? I'm Peggy Pico with an in-depth look. Plus, supporters and opponents of the controversial One Paseo development talk about petition drives to get it on and keep it off the ballot after the city council approved the project.
They're back before the highest court in the land, a new challenge to President's health care overhaul. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. The University of San Diego is facing a new lawsuit filed by one of its students. The law student says she was raped by two male classmates. In the suit, she says university officials discouraged her from reporting the attack. It allegedly happened in May of 2013. The suit says the university did nothing when she ended up in the same class as one of her alleged attackers. In a statement to KPBS, USD said it takes sexual assault claims seriously but does not discuss student matters. USD is the only school in San Diego under federal investigation for how it handles sexual assault cases. A case that threatens health care insurance for millions of Americans is now before the Supreme Court. Justices aggressively questioned lawyers today on both sides of the latest fight over the Affordable Care Act. At the center of the case, tax subsidies that make insurance affordable under President Obama's health care overhaul. Opponents say only residents of states with their own insurance markets like California may get federal help to reduce their premiums.
And I think questions that heavily indicated that the court is likely to rule in favor of the government. It's often hard to tell at oral argument. They're asking tough questions at both sides.
Here you have 37 states who have said no, and that should be respected. It is not a power of the IRS to disregard the plain reading of a statute, to offer a rule that they knew was inconsistent with the text of the statute. That's what the case was about today.
The Supreme Court may issue a ruling in June. And the emotional debate before the El Centro City Council over a new abortion clinic. Hallelujah. The Imperial Valley Press says more than 2,000 people showed up at the meeting. Anti-abortion advocates blasted the process to approve the Planned Parenthood clinic, which will provide abortion services. There were also abortion rights advocates at the meeting supporting the new agreement with El Centro Med Center. City leaders decided to hire a lawyer to review their options. New questions tonight about the San Onofre nuclear plant in the North County. Consumer advocates want to know more about a state regulator's involvement in settlement talks. As KPBS investigative reporter Mitha Sharma explains, the questions start with some recently released emails.
Last May, Commissioner Mike Florio told an administrative law judge he had no part in formulating the 2014 settlement. But ratepayer advocates argue an email exchange in 2012 belies Florio's statement. In one email to an executive at San Onofre majority owner, Southern California Edison, Florio writes about the root cause of the tube leak at San Onofre. Florio then refers to his, quote, regular Wednesday call with the executive. Consumer advocate Charles Langley says Florio's contention that he was not part of San Onofre settlement talks doesn't ring true. A PUC spokeswoman said the commission's inquiry into the San Onofre outage opened months later, by which time the calls between Florio and the Edison executive had ceased. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
As the UC system tries to figure out how to fund its 10 campuses, a Glendale assemblyman introduced a new bill aimed at building a new UC school in his district that would have a special focus on science and technology. He described it as the public version of Caltech. The bill calls for $50 million to cover land purchases and some of the building costs at the proposed campus. Dozens of San Diego State students and alumni set up tents today on campus to showcase why Forbes magazine says the school is one of the most entrepreneurial universities in the country. It's where the rubber literally meets the road for business students on the campus of San Diego State. This adult tricycle has been on the market for a year and a half, and the guy behind the wheel, Tyler Hadzicki, has sold more than 300 of them at $350 a piece. Even I got a chance to ride and quickly learned you steer this baby from the rear, not the handlebars. Entrepreneur Day, or E-Day, happens once a year on SDSU's campus, allowing student-built companies to showcase their goods and services.
Where we celebrate the students selling something on the campus that has actually started companies. We started it about 4 years ago, and we kind of create, as you can see, a little entrepreneurial village on the campus.
Ventures vary from eco-friendly sunglasses to Fitbit bracelets and phone cases, and a music service promoting independent artists. But one of the most successful companies in the past 4 years has been ShakeSmart.
And we sell those in both our stores on campus. We have one right here in the Union.
Started by 2 business school students who wanted to develop a better protein shake.
And we took them all the way from business class through the university system, and they now have 9 locations. They're on 5 university campuses. They're on military bases. It's an amazing story.
What we're trying to do is bring healthy convenience to the masses with ShakeSmart.
The Forbes listing was based on research showing a growing number of people creating successful startups like ShakeSmart before they graduate from SDSU. By the way, the developer of the adult tricycle or low racing trike used online crowdfunding to raise $50,000 to create the first 200 bikes. They've now sold more than 300 and gotten more than 1 million views online. The battle over a planned development in Carmel Valley is far from over. Peggy Pico finds out what's next for the One Paseo project.
San Diego City Council recently approved the $630 million One Paseo proposed development on a 23-acre lot on Del Mar Heights Road in Carmel Valley. Now opponents have launched a petition drive to overturn that decision. Here with a look at both sides of the issue are my guest, Rachel Lang, representing One Paseo's developer, Kilroy Realty, and Ken Ferensky, a Carmel Valley resident, leading the petition effort. And Ken, the City Council approved this project, so why are you fighting the decision with a petition?
We feel that the City Council's decision doesn't represent the City of San Diego, the opinion of residents of the city, and it's gone beyond that as well. It's more about do the local planning boards matter? Do the voice of the local residents matter? It's not clear, and as other areas are updating their plans or considering local development, they should think about whether their voices will be heard.
Rachel, we've got a rendering of the One Paseo development we're going to take a look at right now. What changes has Kilroy Development made to address concerns expressed by Ken and other opponents?
Yeah, now, the community was engaged in this process over the 6 years it's been in development. They had a number of impacts, not just in the reduction of the project by 30%, which everybody's aware of, but also how the project was designed, the use of open space, and how it was laid out so that it would be more usable for the public and more valuable for the community. The incorporation of bike lanes, just a number of ways that they've actually shaped the project, made it better. It's completely different from when we first introduced it, and it's better.
Now, Ken, this petition that you've got going here, who's backing this petition drive?
I'm actually the signator on the petition drive. Right now, the town center is paying for the initial work in the petition, and we're working on creating a PAC to gather money and collect money from the community to push the whole thing forward.
The town center, are they direct competitors? Would they be competitors with the people coming in to sell?
I don't know how competition works in retail. I've heard different things, varied things, whether having more retail is good for the existing retail or whether they're competition, and I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, Rachel, One Paseo's developer, Kilroy Realty, is also collecting signatures for different petitions to keep the chargers in San Diego. It's unrelated to One Paseo, but critics say that it's a strategy to get the signature gatherers out of the way so that the One Paseo opponents won't have enough people to gather signatures. So what would you say to those critics?
Well, if you're looking for heroes in the referendum drive, I mean, here's folks trying to overturn their duly elected representatives of the communities of San Diego and trying to overturn their decision that they made over a series of months. I mean, it's not as if they heard the first time the objections to the project, you know, here at the hearing. They heard for months. Donahue Schreiber, the town center owner, spent $1.5 million in lobbying just to lobby against this project. So they heard the objections. They vetted them against the EIR. They had technical experts to assist them. They had the city staff, which wanted to approve the project. They had a number of, they have their own staff, which are very well versed. So, trying to overturn this is anti-democratic in and of itself.
So this might be a strategy, one strategy used to block the petition. It sounds like, is the development going to move forward while this petition campaign is going on?
No, well, actually they have 30 days to collect their signatures, and if they fail, then yes, we move forward immediately. If it does qualify and they go forward, then it will be, we'll have to wait until after the election.
Okay,
to
so you need to wait for that 30 days.
And we're talking about delaying thousands of jobs and $630 million in private investment in this region for thousands of jobs in new housing. So
okay,
it's
and
unfortunate.
Ken, let me have you respond to that. So, Rachel's saying you had your say. This has gone through lots of, negotiations. So why petition it now?
Well, I think saying that the people, the local elected officials voted for this is a little made up. I think if you look at the local community groups, elected community groups, 4 local planning boards voted against this. 8,000 local people showed up, not showed up, but were against this, with hundreds and hundreds of people from the community showing up. And we don't feel that City Council represented us, that they considered our concerns, and we're concerned that this is going to happen citywide. A 7-2 vote against the community's wishes, against 4 planning boards.
Okay.
What's going to happen to other communities?
All right, there's a lot more on this, and we'll be following this on our website, kpbs.org. Ken Ferensky and Rachel Lang, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, Peggy.
The fight against sexual violence may be heading to California high schools. A state senator just introduced a bill targeting health classes. It would require a curriculum to include lessons that raise awareness on sexual assault and violence. Senator Kevin De Leon says it would create a voice to counter pop culture. California's Supreme Court has struck down a blanket restriction on where paroled sex offenders can now live. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at the ruling and its impact here in San Diego.
The state's highest court ruled in favor of the San Diego Public Defender's Office, who challenged the 2006 voter-approved Jessica's Law on behalf of 4 registered sex offenders on parole in San Diego County. My guest, Alex Simpson, law professor at Cal Western School of Law and the associate director of the California Innocent Project, joins us with analysis on this. And Alex, how does this ruling actually change Jessica's Law?
So specifically what the court found is that the residency restrictions of Jessica's Law were unconstitutional. So specifically parolees who are subject to registered sex offense registration are now able to live within 2,000 feet of schools or parks because of this new law.
And this is different because it's a case-by-case basis, or how will that be judged?
Yeah, so the court found that if you have a blanket restriction on all registered sex offenders who are on parole, that's unconstitutional because there's no rational basis for that determination. In fact, the court found that in many instances it actually increases incidents of homelessness and other issues. The only thing that the court found was that as a practical matter, we really just don't have a good reason to have registered sex offenders who are restricted in this way.
I want to come back to that in a moment, but first, specifically, who does this ruling apply to?
It will specifically apply to people who are currently on parole, who are subject to 290 registration, sex offense registration.
But not all sex offenders.
No, obviously, if you're talking about somebody who is convicted of a sex offense, but they don't go to prison for it and they're only on probation, this wouldn't apply. And it also doesn't apply if you were previously on parole, but now you're no longer on parole. So that doesn't apply in that situation.
No, you touched on this. Justice Marvin Baxter, a conservative on the California Supreme Court, wrote this decision. And did he say anything else about this as far as the reasons why this law isn't doing what it's supposed to do?
Well, the court found specifically, and this was a unanimous decision, something that I think that none of us really expected in the legal world, but the court found specifically that you have to have a rational basis for this particular restriction. And there wasn't really any research that showed that this actually helped to protect children or to decrease the number of people who are going to reoffend. And in fact, it does increase the likelihood that they're going to be homeless. It does increase the problems that homelessness comes with. And so because of that, the court found there was no rational basis for that.
And one of the problems being if somebody's homeless, you can't monitor them or track them as well if they're a sex offender? Yeah,
one of the things that the court did find was that it does make it more likely that GPS monitoring is going to be less effective. There were a number of people from law enforcement who testified that there was a tremendous increase in homelessness in the sex offender registry population as a result of Jessica's law. So that's what the court really was wrestling with.
How challenging here is it for people who are paroled sex offenders in San Diego County and San Diego City to find housing?
So the court looked at the 482 sex offenders that we have in San Diego and found that only 36%, about a third, were compliant with Jessica's law. So the vast majority of people who are on registered sex offense requirements were not able to comply with Jessica's law and find housing that was affordable, that they were able to actually stay away from 2,000 feet from houses, from schools or parks.
Could this ruling, do you think, eventually affect other cities in California?
There's no reason to say that San Diego is in some way unique with regards to this. I mean, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all of them have large populations and large sex offender populations, and the same problems with, if you're talking about urban areas, there are schools and parks that will pretty much make sure that nobody can kind of stay in the downtown area. And that's really what the court was wrestling with. You know, you've got to have the ability to give services to people who are on parole, and so that's why they found it was just not practical.
Okay, Alex Simpson, thanks so much for the update.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next News Hour, a look at the rough return to civilian life for some women veterans of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Going home, Harley and Carly. They're among 35 beagle pups rescued by the Rancho Coastal Humane Society. A woman gave them up last week. She was overwhelmed by their numbers. The Humane Society received 400 applications for the dogs, some from as far away as Chicago, even New York. The puppies were spayed and neutered before they went home today with their new families. California's lingering drought is putting pressure on San Diego officials to be better water stewards, especially for the lush landscaping at Balboa Park. As KPBS reporter Eric Anderson shows us, the key may be in the park's historic buildings.
Casa de Balboa sits at the heart of San Diego's premier park, right next to the Reuben Fleet Science Center. The building is surrounded by lush vegetation, but the plants that grace the grounds of this civic centerpiece are thirsty. With water scarce and expensive, park officials are looking for options. Jim Hughes works with the Friends of Balboa Park, and he's standing on top of Casa de Balboa's expansive flat roof. He says there's a chance that this structure could help the city claim a significant and regular flow of water.
They calculated that between this building and the adjacent building, we may be able to capture 90,000 gallons of water per month, averaged over the year.
The mostly flat roof has a wall around the top. Water would build up here if it couldn't find a way to get off the roof, so architects installed drains. When it rains, water rushes to the low spots, pours into the drains, and flows to the city's sewage system.
We're trying to capture that water instead of it going down a city drain pipe into the wastewater system. We want to use it for irrigation in an adjacent garden area.
But when a region's average annual rainfall is around 10 inches, even lower in the midst of this prolonged drought, relying on the weather isn't a practical water solution. That's why Hughes says they're also taking advantage of another source of water on the roofs. The air conditioning units that keep the buildings cool create a lot of condensation, and that moisture is already being captured.
They come out and they flow down here. They collect, the water runs down by gravity, and eventually will end up in the condensation drain line. And this is water that's going right into the city sewer system.
Hughes says crews will install new pipes that divert the runoff and funnel it to a holding tank. That tank will be built on the side of the Casa de Balboa building. Once the system is in place, the captured water will feed the landscaping in a pocket garden that's right next door. This project hits home for San Diego State University Environmental Services professor Matt Rahn. His students are currently mapping the park's water infrastructure.
As we start looking into the future, we're going to have to identify areas for water conservation and efficiency strategies, and to be able to manage the park in increasingly sustainable way.
SDSU students hope to eventually quantify just how much water is consumed in the park. He says that'll open the door to more projects that can save water.
We have, aging infrastructure and increased demand on water resources throughout Southern California and indeed throughout most of the western United States. And so this is an opportunity to have the city and Balboa Park serve as a model for the rest of our community on how to manage its water infrastructure and increase efficiencies over time.
This project is limited to one small slice of the park, and it's largely benefiting the Zorro Garden. But the San Diego Women's Foundation is hoping the project has more reach. The foundation's Marjorie O'Malley says her organization approved a $40,000 donation because there's a public education component.
Because it's Balboa Park and our centennial, there'll be a lot of people coming through the park this year. And it will be terrific to have them see and have the rest of the country, not just Californians who come here, not just native San Diegans, see that we really do care and we're looking at different ways to conserve water.
Friends of the park officials say if this demonstration project works, they'll look to expand the effort to capture and use water that would otherwise be flushed away. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
You can find more photos and stories about Balboa Park online at kpbs.org. It is part of our year-long celebration on the heart of San Diego. We're starting to warm up again here in San Diego. We're looking at 70s along the coast over the next few days. Plenty of sunshine for the inland valleys as well, upper 70s there. Breezy in the mountain areas with temperatures much cooler, looking at 50s and 60s. And 70s and 80s for the desert areas. Let's recap some of our top stories now. Another legal challenge to Obamacare. Supreme Court justices questioned lawyers on both sides today in the new fight over the Affordable Care Act. The focus is on tax subsidies that make insurance affordable for millions of Americans. Opponents say only residents of states with their own exchange markets like California may get federal help to reduce their premiums. A ruling from the High Court is expected in June. We will have more on this story coming up on the PBS NewsHour at 7. A law student at the University of San Diego is suing the school. She says it discouraged her from reporting a rape by two male classmates. The alleged rape took place in 2013. She says a professor told her not to go to police, and she ended up in the same class as one of her alleged attackers. USD says it takes sexual assault claims seriously. It's currently under federal investigation for how it handles these cases. And in El Centro, there is an emotional debate over a new abortion clinic. More than 2,000 people showed up at a hearing. Anti-abortion advocates blasted the process to approve the Planned Parenthood clinic, which will provide abortion services. There were also abortion rights advocates at the meeting supporting the new agreement with El Centro Med Center. City leaders there decided to hire a lawyer to review their options. And here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. A deadly officer-involved shooting, sparking new questions about the lack of options to treat substance abuse, how drug addicts may be caught in the crossfire. Also tomorrow on Midday Edition, if Obamacare loses its latest battle before the Supreme Court, could the consequences trickle down to California? That's at noon on Midday Edition, right on KPBS Radio. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.